I'm Will Hanson and welcome to the Experts in the Room podcast, brought to you by Extreme Push. In this series, we chat to some of the leading minds working in the customer experience, retention and data space in some of the most competitive and fastest growing industries in the world. In this episode, VIP Players, I spoke with iGaming growth and retention star Danijela Slisko. With experience setting up some of the best VIP programs in the industry at brands including Casumo, Mr. Green and Tipico, we dig into the who, why and what of VIP, plus plenty more. This is a must if you're working in CRM in iGaming. Enjoy. Great to have the Experts in the Room podcast back today. I'm joined and very excited to be joined by Danijela Slisko, growth and strategy consultant, expert in the iGaming industry, one of probably, if not the leading lights when it comes to VIP marketing, particularly in the casino industry. You've worked with some of the biggest brands, Casumo, Mr. Green, Tipico, just to name a few. Danijela, hugely excited to have you on the podcast today. It's really going to be a good one, I think. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Will. Really excited to be here.
Great. And I think what I usually like to do with the kickoff is to maybe just get a bit of context about your background in the industry. And I think your story is particularly good, Danijela, having started on the betting shop floor and then obviously working your way up in some of the biggest brands in Europe to be leading big teams and digging into like really exciting parts of the business around CRM, data and VIP. So maybe give us a little bit of background on your experience and then we'll dive into some of the topics that I want to cover. I've got a list here that's as long as my arm, so we'll get into it.
All right, cool. So I kind of started, I think it was end of 2011, so over 10 years ago. I was still studying marketing, and as you know, you wanted a little bit of money on the side so you can go out and studying obviously doesn't give you much money. So I had a couple of friends who were working in a petting shop, and they said it's such an easy job and it's so cool, and I was like, okay, then I'll give it a go. I was really not like someone who is into betting or anything at all, to be honest, but I kind of really liked the systems, and I started working in a betting shop on Saturdays and then also in the evenings, and it was really like I really liked it that way, that I thought like, okay, why is he betting? How does this whole system work? It's so interesting that so many people are drawn to this. And it was really exciting. I think it was also so interesting, especially on Wednesdays and also Tuesdays when there will be a Champions League. So It was like the most exciting times to work because people were so into the live betting. And you were like, at the beginning, I didn't follow football at all, but then you kind of started like really following it. And it was so interesting how I saw it like I saw their faces when they were like trying to calculate the combination bets and the team next to goal and so on and so forth. So it was really interesting. And I kind of ended up then in Malta, of course, working for Tipico. First marketing analyst, but then I started to build the VIP department there from scratch. It was pretty new, the whole VIP program, so to say. And then moved also to Mr. Green, where I led the team. At the end, it was, I think, over 20 account managers, and it was more international as the head of VIP. And I think that was the most exciting time because I was at the same time had the responsibility of a team and then at the same time building a strategy. So that was super challenging for me, but I really look back at it as a really nice and exciting time. And also Casumo then as a country manager, and I'm now working as a consultant for several areas of the business. So kind of a long time.
It's a great story, and I love the hook about what drew you in, and I relate to it being an Australian stranded in Europe and not too much of a football fan before I got here. You kind of get sucked into the Champions League,
exactly.
Don't you? It's a great way to do it. And you look at like the World Cup that's just gone and how the industry has such a big opportunity to get people enjoying the games off the back of the experience of enjoying the World Cup live, So you see the brands that have done a good job in kind of harnessing that in that background. VIP, is where I think I want to go here today. So that's really where I want to drill down, because like you've just said in your experience there, Danijela, you've set up, some of the best VIP programs, I would say, going around at the moment. Why don't we start at the beginning for some of our listeners and maybe talk about what a VIP program is and what a VIP player looks like in a gaming and an iGaming context, because I think that would be really cool to kind of get into it.
Yeah, I think many probably will expect that I will now name a little bit of a kind of segmentation, but probably we're going to talk about data a little bit later. I think a VIP player is someone who takes, let's say, sports betting, but also the casino gameplay quite as a serious hobby, I would say, right? So it's not because some people were saying, okay, why is he staking so high and so on and so forth. And I said, you cannot really compare them to yourself, because that's just a type of person or a character who's taking this hobby a bit serious, who wants to be challenged. I think especially in sportsbook, they want to challenge their intellect. And I think that the casino players, on the other hand, wants to escape a little bit from the day-to-day business. I think it's also VIPs usually are also business owners who are rather characteristics who like to take the risks. And I think this is and that's probably from the VIP perspective. And from a business point of view, I think at the same time, due to their commitment to the play and to also the industry, I think that's why they're so important, also due to their high stakes to a business overall.
Do you think that also brings, I know there's some topical news at the moment out there, like risks to brands as well? Is there an appetite for risk within the brands to really pursue VIP in that sense that you're obviously exposing to a bigger kind of payout to the player, but making sure that you get it right so that you're balancing that type of risk? Is that something that you'd consider when you're putting together a program?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think on the one hand, if you're not focusing enough on VIP, then you are probably risking a business opportunity. If you're focusing too much, you're risking also at the same time to be and have your business dependent on just a couple of players. And I don't think that's healthy for a long-term strategy either. I think it needs to really balance it out in a way, because you have an opportunity there for sure, and the players are there. I mean, the interest is there. Now you need to obviously see, okay, that you have a really healthy amount of VIP players in the database. Yeah,
okay. One of the areas that I think is really interesting about this is scale, right? If you're a small brand and you've got a few VIPs, then it's relatively manageable. I know you've just said there that you had 20 account managers working under you, and it can maybe be looked at as like an account management function. But how have you gone about using kind of data and technology to make VIP scalable, and how personalized does it need to be? Can you run programs that are purely run by technology where you're not having much personal interaction, or do you think that personal interaction with top VIPs is really important? It'd be cool to get your opinion on how that breaks down.
I think that's definitely what can be done, like automation. And that's, I think, what every operator should work on. I think definitely to start with the segmentation. So to segment down the player groups into, let's say from 1 to 5 segments. I mean, you can name it whatever, 5-star, 1-star, there's diamonds, like silver, whatever, kind of tiers. And I think there's certainly an amount, maybe a small amount of people or customers who need a dedication, so that means a dedicated account manager. That I think for sure. And an account manager can definitely handle a couple of customers. But when it comes to the lower segments, which you want to kind of retain or upscale up, that's where the automation actually comes in. So that can mean that you automate from the data, okay, the player who usually, let's take 3 months data into consideration, and you see he's actually quite active here and there, and then he hasn't been active in 3 weeks' time, or even less, 2 weeks' time. Sometimes he's maybe just going on holiday, right? So not to think that he's already lapsed. But I think that's where, for example, automation can go in. An automated personalized email, I hope everything's fine. Sometimes what they need is just some attention. They don't really need some tens of free spins or bonuses. They probably just need to know, okay, someone is taking care of me and asking me how I'm doing.
Yeah.
And what I also like is if there is no reason to contact, it's like, yeah, but we cannot contact them if you don't have anything to ever. It's like, yeah, well, ask him for feedback. How did he like the game or the new website the other day? You know, it's just having a little bit of a conversation. I think this actually had a better impact than any bonus.
And players, do you find that players are responsive to that type of like conversation in the whole, or do you sometimes have people go, no, I'm not interested in responding? Yeah, whatever. Just let me give me another bonus.
Yeah, I mean, for sure you have, right? I mean, some are really thankful and grateful that, someone is taking care of me. I think especially in the beginning, right? When like VIP was like no topic at all and none of the operators did it. Maybe some in the UK, but then the rest of Europe not. That's probably, I think, where some personalized email had the biggest impact. But even if they don't reply, it's like, how can I say, if you look into your email inbox and then you have one brand message you a newsletter, you don't open the newsletter at all, but maybe a week or 2 weeks later you remember that brand. It's a little bit of a brand image marketing going there. So this is how I like to see it. So I think definitely contacts, just any contact is definitely worth it. And
when you're looking at a program and kind of scaling it up, it'd be good to maybe get into the weeds a little bit. And I'm conscious of this, like pulling out some of those key data points that you think that constitute a VIP. Like what type of levels do you think people need to be getting at? Can a VIP be someone that's only spending €100 a week? Can they be someone that needs to be spending a fortune within a platform? Like, are there different definitions that you've used and worked within the program? Are there certain areas that you need to target and put more priority on as a marketing manager? If you're, for those that are listening and might be trying to set up a program at the moment and looking to tweak.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I think how I would start. I mean, and that's the thing, because data is not like comparable to every operator, right? So you have to, every operator has different data, different kind of customers and so on and so forth. But what I always like to emphasize is the Pareto principle, so the 80-20 rule. So that means that 80% of your outcomes are coming from 20% of your customers, so to say. And I think in our industry, it's even lower. So sometimes we talk about 3% of your customers giving you like 60-70% of the revenue. So I think this is how it needs to be looked at. And while in the beginning of any VIP program back in the days, of course, the focus was revenue, but also turnover. But also here, it depends. I think we are now moving more into a loyalty, retention kind of segmentation, rather than just depending on their value and the high stake and so on and so forth. So because someone is... even if a guy who comes in a week's time and he's heavily playing because he won the money somewhere else, does it make him a VIP in your brand? Probably not, right? If it's someone who's been a long time and having a really healthy kind of player behavior and staying longer there, because if you invest now into him, he will be there long term. So that's probably a higher VIP than someone just coming in and spending on one night.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, and it's something that we see with our customers in being able to pick out the right audiences to actually invest in. This might not be something that you can answer, or even anecdotally. Do you think players in general are happy to be loyal to one brand? Like I know it's human behavior. Like you think about your shopping when you're using an e-commerce site, or or you're doing whatever, you're banking. We tend to stick with one brand. I know that I do, or one or two brands that we really like because we know we get deliverables from it. Do you think that we're kind of maybe too jaded with VIPs and we're thinking, they'll just bounce through and we might as well just try to maximize revenue while we can? Or do you think brands are thinking about this better long-term for like user experience and driving that loyalty?
I think more and more and more, because the industry has changed, especially in Europe, more regulated markets, and it's now, while in the beginning it was more about having like the best games, the quickest ones, and so on and so forth. Now it's having like more and more about the strategy and also trustworthiness. And trustworthiness comes through being like with a really good customer service and experience, right? So that comes any sort of deposit. I always say deposit and withdrawals because it's so sensitive. It's money, right? So it's his winnings. It's also his like depositing on a side. So how is the whole flow working? And I think this is really, really crucial. And I know also like the players are always on forums saying, "Hey, they're holding my withdrawal. They're holding my withdrawal." I think that is basically the biggest complaint out there. So I think it's on the one hand, that's what I always say. From operational and customer experience and process point of view, this has to work. I think if the process works and the investment is there, that's how retention will work nowadays, and rather than any probably bonus setup.
Yeah, I think and it's a huge growth area in the industry too. You can see like the plethora of payment platforms and the different ways that, brands can go about it, like even the explosion of kind of Bitcoin casinos and Web 3.0 casinos. Like it's massive compared to what it was like 10, 12 years ago on the shop floor, completely different experience. And we kind of forget in the industry how fast it has moved, really. Like it feels like the norm has been around for a long time, but like, you look at apps and, some of the biggest brands in the business didn't have apps 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, So, no, that's super interesting. I'd love to get your perspective on it from a responsible gaming standpoint, in how much operators are starting to look at that properly, I think. And obviously with the way, particularly in Europe, UK is a great example of it. Like, regulators are starting to come down with serious teeth at the moment when operators are doing the wrong thing. How can VIP programs kind of enhance responsible gaming, and how much do you think operators take that serious in going, look, this is a VIP, but we're suspecting that something's not right here. We need to go in and make sure that everything's okay on that end from an RG perspective. Yeah,
I think when the first regulations came out and it was the topic like responsible gaming and VIP, I think there was actually an opportunity there. Also, again, from a customer experience point of view, to get it kind of right. So if it's I think one strategy fits all is not the right way here as well, because data from a, let's say, lower segment is completely different to the ones from a VIP segment. Yeah. And I think if you adjust the responsible gaming strategy here, then you're also rather going into a perspective where you're retaining a VIP player long term. And I think this is where definitely work needs to be done a little bit more, because I've seen also VIPs being blocked or always being like spammed with, hey, have your gameplay in order, and that's fine. But I mean, either he gets it in order and their actions being taken, rather than sending an email every day, right? I mean, they don't want an operator to feel like a mom, right, telling him what to do. I think this is not the right way, because then even if he closes his account, or even if the operator closes his account, I mean, I don't think we have helped the customer. The customer is going somewhere else, right? Yeah. But if you kind of manage him to play more responsible and he still stays active, I think that's where it was successful for both ways. I like your point there as well, and I think you're coming back to it time and time again here. Like, data is everything. In this industry, for when you're talking to your players across all aspects of it, whether you want them to come back on to play a game or whether you want to help them out or potentially see a risk with RG. Maybe I'd really like to get your insights, if you're from your consultancy perspective here, of what are you looking at as best practice for brands when they're starting to look at their data? Like, we know the player account management systems do such a good job of collecting everything. But what we find in the industry is that real disconnect between, I've got the data and it's all sitting here, but I'm the VIP manager or the CRM manager or the marketing manager or the communications person or the customer support manager.
and I can't get it to do anything with it in a usable way that's quick, that works. Is that type of area something that you're talking to brands about, how they can start to improve that, or how they should be looking at improving that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think, first of all, because we were saying maybe the VIP manager or customer support agent doesn't understand data, but my experience is sometimes that management doesn't understand data.
That's a good point too. Yeah. So you can start at that top level, I guess, and then we can work down. Yeah.
No, but we all think we kind of understand it, and it's pretty much clear, but probably not many do, because I think you really need to dig into it. And then you will make it understand. But yeah, I think when I approach it, it's like, okay, what is the goal? Is the goal the retention? Is the goal to focus more on VIP so that they stay longer, and then hence the revenue is going to increase? And I think this is where my approach is, that that the goal needs to be discussed and also aligned with the strategy, and then kind of approach it from that perspective. And I cannot say, okay, turnover or revenue is like, oh, those are the two KPIs we take forward. There is so many. There is average bet. There is activity. There is also not turnover in total. It should be maybe in 3 months on average, and so on and so forth, so that we really tackle the ones who are more loyal, rather the ones who said, okay, they had a really high turnover week, and now they are part of the VIP program. Is it really like? I think this is where it comes down to.
Do you see? Who do you think are doing really good jobs in the VIP space at the moment, as far as brands? And you might not be able to name drop them, I don't know. But do you think that there are some doing a really good job at the moment, like campaigns that you're seeing?
To be honest, lately I haven't seen any of that. I think the focus has changed a little bit, given that more regulated markets were there, and especially with the KYC processes, I think that's where kind of the focus was lacking. But I cannot name specific any brands, but I only, when it started kind of in Europe, I always was looking at UK brands because they were longer there. They had the loyalty points set up. They had the events. They had the dedicated account managers. They had the program. They had even a name for it. And I think that's where I looked at it most, actually, in UK. And that's where like, okay, this is how it should be done. Like, and they're used to it. And it's still funny because in the rest of the Europe, the customers were not used to that. So when they were first approached by VIP account managers, like, okay, what's going on now? Who's contacting me from? Exactly. And I think there were also no bonuses at all. So when they got a bonus, they were like, why am I getting this now? And what's happening? And you know, it was so interesting. And now the brands have kind of challenged each other, and were so competitive with their loyalty programs, with their cashback bonuses, deposits, free spins, whatever. Yeah. And now we're talking about, I don't know, I saw a graph the other day, it's like 30-40% of NGR bonus. It's like, oh my God, where is this gone, right? Yeah. It's actually like in a bad way, I must say, because we're not focusing on the play, we're focusing on bonusing the player like crazy. So I would say in the UK it's probably where I was looking most to.
This is a good segue into bonuses, actually, and I think that's interesting. And you were saying 30-40% net gaming revenue like on bonuses. So bonuses, I think that's a good segue here. Like the market, particularly in Europe and definitely in the UK, like I just think it's hugely oversaturated with brands basing everything on bonusing. And I actually think it's breaking the user experience a little bit. Like, why click into Paddy Power unless I'm going to get a bonus on a bet that I'm putting on as a sports bet, for instance? Like, I just won't bet unless they're offering me something. Do you think brands have kind of built themselves into a bit of a trap with that? And is there a way out for them? That's probably, if you can answer that, I'm sure you'll have every brand in Europe messaging you saying, come do some consulting. But like that's a huge statistic for, 40% of revenue being affected by bonuses and what you're potentially losing with that. have we just built in bonuses now that's the fair value that fans are expecting when they're putting on a bet?
Yeah. No, just to explain a little bit, it's not 40%, but it's like 40% of the bonus of the NGR. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I, as you said, I think they built themselves into it a little bit, right? Because the market became so saturated, so they were hammering bonuses out there. And the thing is, like, if we think about it, why did players actually come to those websites of sports betting in casino? It was not bonus. At the beginning, there were no bonuses, so it was all about it was all about actually, the game, right, or the match, and so on and so forth. And I think instead of investing into the platform, instead of investing into engagement, right, rather into bonusing, this is where then the brands got into. And I think when this happened, retention got lower, churn increased. And that's where, and also it was given that the restrictions from a marketing perspective, it was not easy to get acquisition up to speed anymore, right? So that's why it's like, okay. And also, of course, there were big brands buying, like big fishes buying the small brands. So the first thing what they do before, they're not improving the experience, cost cutting. And how do you do that? You cut costs on marketing side. You do it, of course, from an operation point of view, payments and so on and so forth. And then like, we still need to grow. So how are you going to do this? Oh, wait, we have so many lapsed players. Let's just, hammer them and reactivate them and so on and so forth. And I think this is actually what happened right there. So they were, even the data was there. They were not looking into, okay, wait a minute. So we have, for example, let's say an amount of players who are only active if they receive a bonus. So that means we are actually giving him bonus every now and then, but he hasn't deposited in ages. And we are always giving him free spins and so on and so forth. And I think this is exactly where the mistake happened. And some businesses were not built for long term. I have a bit of a feeling since it's growing so fast. They did it they're like, okay, let's do everything where we get short-term outcomes, there I have a bit of a feeling that's where it's coming. So the industry itself, and you of course have the pressure, right? So it has to work. You're opening a casino, okay, now it's gonna, you have to grow. Yeah. It's a new brand. And I think the pressure was there, and that's where I think there were a couple of mistakes which happened from a strategy point of view.
Do you think there's a way out for brands? Like obviously the big players and the consolidation helps them because of their player base size. Like, do you think if you're a new brand coming to market and trying to innovate, is there a way to do it without bonusing? For instance, maybe in Europe, I think the US could be relatively, what's the word I'm looking for? Illustrative of this in being able to do something different where they push heavily into fantasy. They push heavily into different areas rather than bonusing at the moment. So do you think there is a way for, if we were to start a new casino or a new sports book tomorrow, you and I, could we do it without bonusing? I
think we could, but we need to, of course, have something which is exciting, which the other brands don't have, of course. And I think gamification. That's for sure, and because that's one thing, and then the other thing is probably the social aspect, which can be developed more. I remember on every conference they were talking, we should do more about some social gaming or whatever, and I think some brands have tried it, then it was not successful, but I still see pretty much value in it. And gamification in the sense that if I look at if you want to learn a new language, there's a lot of gamification around that as well, and people get really hooked. And I think this is what we can do. Probably, gamification, there's opportunities or ideas around it, what you can do without bonuses, right? So that you, unleash some new games or whatever it is. And I think there are pretty much big opportunities there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, where you're talking about bringing something new to the market, I think that the market's relatively stagnant with products at the moment. And there are definitely some good brands up and coming that are playing in that gamification space. I look at guys like Low Six and stuff that are doing some really cool things. and yeah, you can see brands that are tapping into that. And when you open an app and you go, oh, that's new, maybe I can flick that onto my friends and
exactly.
we can play together. Yeah. But probably not enough of it in the market, I think. So there you go. That's the top tip that everyone can take away as they start their multi-million-dollar casino and sportsbook. And we'll take 10% of those revenues, please. That's the way that it happens. But what about a little look maybe at 2023 and what you've got potentially coming up in the pipeline as far as, what you are seeing as trends and industry topics that you really want to stay abreast of as an expert in the industry?
I think the future will, as we actually said it a little bit, gamification will be a thing. Also, I think, having also that social interaction, doing right. I think players want to interact but still be a little bit of incognito, if that's possible, and because we are becoming more and more tracked. So and I read a book once on why people are actually playing casino and why and they do that because they want to escape their daily rules, right? Because you have to work, you have relationships you need to take care of, and then people break those rules in your daily lives, and then when you play, there are rules, but they're not being, you lose because that's the rule, kind of. And I think that's why people escape it, and I think this is where the focus needs to be, to understand a little bit more, why do people play? Rather than, okay, what could make the business really grow, right? If you go back to the why, I think then we will probably have some new ideas coming up.
And that probably feeds into the responsible gaming piece too, and understanding that why, when being able to pick out when a player's in threat and they're playing not for escapism and they're not playing for fun and they're playing when it's at risk there, and being able to recognize that and help when a brand can help, or be able to do something about it. I think they're really interesting topics that are starting to come about, with particularly some brands looking at how to do that at a scalable level, using AI and using data to be able to inform that in kind of a very, in a way that's not not looking at personal information and making it too intrusive, I think is important too. And being able to respect people's ability to make decisions as well, I think is important. So, I think that space is very interesting and ties into what you're saying there, Danijela.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think, responsible gaming, building in a responsible way into gamification. Yeah. I mean, there's a really great opportunity, for example, there. And as we said, right, we will be more restricted on marketing, so the crazy influx of FTDs or whatever is not going to be there anymore. So that means that you the focus needs to be on retention, and then at the same time you cannot bonus them crazy. That's also a responsible thing. So that's why you need to take care of them from a long-term perspective. So if you do it from a responsible gaming point of view, and then focus it from that end, and doing it really smart, because I have a bit of sometimes that operators are just saying, okay, we have this data here, let's build something, but they always forget the player perspective, always. And I think this is where opportunity is lying as well. So to understand the player really, why is he playing that way? How can we actually use AI as well for that, so that we can see upon 2 weeks of player data, we can see, okay, what is the expected lifetime value of this player, and what is the expected responsible gaming score of this player, and you can actually tackle him in the first 2 weeks of his gameplay, sort of thing. So exactly, I think this is where it's going to go.
It's really brands that are driving value to their players versus just driving transactions, I think. So it's that value-based retention are the guys that are going to win heading into 2023, I think. And I think we'll both be proven right when we catch up on the podcast next year with that one.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to come full circle, Danijela, and kind of go back to your experience, starting in betting a shop while you were working at university. For anyone that's entering this world of, iGaming, sports betting and gaming, looking to go into the kind of marketing route, looking to get into there, what would be your advice in how to approach a career in that? I think that would be a really nice way to kind of round out the podcast, because your experience is so great within this, and you've touched so many aspects of the industry today as an expert. Like, we could talk for ages, but anyone trying to get into the industry, I think when they listen to these podcasts, they go, oh, geez, we're talking about net gaming revenue and retention and loyalty and data. How did you go about practical steps on kind of getting a handle on everything within the industry?
I think, any role to start off, I think many people are saying customer support is probably the best way to start, because then you will understand everything. You will understand the player more than management will, Yeah. And I think this is, for example, a great way to start. Always people think, it's not that important job, but I think it is. And you can progress really well. This is, I think, something what I really like about this industry. So if you're really good and dedicated and business is growing, you can really go up in the career, and I think it's a really great opportunity, and you can learn so much. But there's what I think is also important is to see, okay, what are you actually bringing on the table? So what are you bringing to the table, and how can you show that? And if you can show it with data, of course, everyone will like it. But if there is anything, if you improve the experience, if you have something you can show, I think this is where the focus needs to be, because people are assuming, okay, I'm doing that. Yeah, okay, what was the added value for the company for this? And that's what everyone likes to see. And I think if that can brought up in a really nice way, then I think this is a good way forward.
Yeah, I think it's I think that's good advice across anyone entering CRM or marketing in any industry, I think, not just sports betting and gaming. And I think there's so many topics here that we touched on today that transcend that industry as well, that can be applied across different industries. And you see some doing it better than others. We see lots of talk around personalization and how some of the big brands like Spotify and Netflix do such a good job. And then you look at the sports betting and gaming industry, and I don't think that there is a more data-led industry in the world at the moment. I think there's a really good handle on data. Even though when we talk down about it sometimes, I think, within the industry, but I think you compare it to, say, what retailers are doing, they're so far ahead. But there's always a drive to be better and to do next, and getting to talk to someone that knows so much about it has been really good today. I really appreciate that. Danijela, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you as well.
Anyone that wants to get in contact with Danijela, I am sure she's very open to it. So drop her a message or drop us a message. We'll get you in contact with her.
Cool. Thanks so much. It was really fun to talk about it.
Cool. No worries.